Hey guys, welcome to Bar Z. My name's Stan, and before we get started today, I'm going to do something that I've literally never done on this channel. If you look at my subscriptions, I've been hovering between 34 and 38K forever. If you're not already subscribed, go down there and hit that button to subscribe. I'm giving them away all week. They're absolutely free. They don't cost you a dime. So I'm asking for subscriptions. One of these days I'd like to break 40,000, God forbid. I know I'm not that big of a channel. I know that my content isn't completely awesome. But if you appreciate anything I do for you, ever, Summer Bash, one video that helped you, go sub for me. All right? That's enough of that. Next up, we're going to wander around the shop and see some stuff I'm trying to get done before Summer Bash. I said there was wants and needs, and I had a couple of wants. So I wanted to do this thing on the lathe. I wanted to put an overhead jib in, and outside of that, it's just cleaning. I got people coming to help me out and clean, so that's coming up real quick. And I want to remind you that we're going to be closing registration. So you can't get a registration. You'll have to be a walk-in, and we charge more for walk-ins because we want to punish you for not registering in time. So if you didn't register, you pay more. And then we're going to be closing down raffle ticket sale. We had them. I've been announcing here on the channel. I don't know what else to do. I mean, people, when I cut it off, I cut it off. It's done. I need time to process the tickets at the end there. So we are going to be closing them down this Sunday. We're less than 10 days away from Summer Bash. It's coming up faster than you think. Let's go see what we're doing around the shop. Okay, well, first of all, let's talk about tool posts. The lathe, the Monarch came with a big 4-way. That's what I usually run. It's got a nice index wheel on it. It indexes 0, 30, 60, 90. So it's got the detent balls, and it's not one of those ratchet types where you always have to go clockwise. You can take it any direction. But you always have to do shims and things like that. I just shear up 18 gauge and use those for shims to mount my tools. So this was my bread and butter. I have a smaller one. Both of those work on the lathe okay. This one you have to space it up because it's kind of small. But the big 4-way was nice. And then I had an old KDK number 2 with all these tool holders. And you see I got all the tools stripped out of them, boring bar holders, things like that. And the KDK number 1 and the KDK number 2 share a dovetail. It's the same size, just the tool holders are slightly taller. So all you have to do is do the adjusting screws to get your tool on height. So I have all these, but I got a new tool post holder, and I'm going to show you what I got. I kind of modernized the Monarch. So the old 4-ways and the KDK are going away. I'll probably have those at the swap meet available if you guys, if anyone's into the vintage stuff. There's nothing wrong with a 4-way tool post. It just takes a little longer to set up. Let's go look at what I put on the Monarch. Now this is a Dorian. They call it the Quadra, like an Ultra, and each individual tool, try to go top down on this, each individual tool is height adjustable, which is super nice. That's the main thing, and it repeats. And when you release the ball, the single index in 15, 30, 45. So it's got a very repeatable index. And so I've got these 4 tool holders, plus a couple of boring bar holders, plus a threading bar holder that I bought. And I worked these out with Shars last year. I never got around to shooting video on the Quadra. It's a very nice unit. What it uses to change the tools is a big Allen wrench. And you just come in here and release each individual tool, and that just lifts off just like a standard tool post. But it does rotate 360 degrees in 15-degree increments, and it's very repeatable. It gets pinned to the compound. You use a set of dowel pins to pin it to the compound. So you do have to drill, well, you don't have to, but you drill your compound to make it more rigid and make it do the sweep and make sure it's going to be parallel. Set your protractor on your base very exactly, and then pin off your tool post. From there, you have to machine the T-nut and all that stuff. But a very, very nice tool holder. The only thing that's bugging me is that red knob. So when you come back and look at this thing, I really want this thing to look like a black and white photograph. And that little red knob looks like Rudolph, just standing out. So I want this thing to be very muted in the absence of color. That is a red anodized aluminum knob. So I'm going to take it over. Maybe I'll do it on this lathe. I don't know. I'm just going to sand off the anodized and give it kind of a brushed look and make it silver. So that's what I'm shooting for. So that's my only complaint. But I'm probably the only guy in the world that would complain about that. And that coolant pump down there was replaced at some point, and that always kind of bugged me too. That kind of blue. It's old. It's an old pump motor, but it's always bugged me that it's the wrong color. And I think I'm just going to take it out and maybe paint it black someday. I've never even got the coolant pump working on this thing. So another thing I'm working on here is this pipe is going up to a, I don't know if you can see it up there. Yeah, you can see it. There's a pillow block up there. And then there's another pillow block on the other side of that 4-inch square tube. That's a 3/16 square tube. And there's a 1-inch or 1 1/4 inch shaft coming down through the middle of that pipe, through both bearings, and down into a welded in slug in that pipe. And then down at the bottom, there's an old wheel bearing out of an F350, and that, well, that turns real nice. We're making a gantry. You know, that little plate, that gray plate right there, I got to get it squared up and bolted down to the ground. This is just a test fit right now. I just fitted it, you know, to make sure it's going to fit this way. And I got to get it out of there, and then I got to weld an I-beam to it, and it's going to swing over the lathe to pull those chucks off. That one's not too bad to change. It's pretty heavy, but that big faceplate down there is really a pain to get to or get on the machine. And that big forge on the back is a pig. And I thought I was going to die the other day when I had to mount that forge jaw. So I need some help. And it's not going to get any easier as I get older. So right now I'm going to sweat a little bit, put that overhead jib in, and have it done. In my golden years, I can still change my chuck. All right. I picked that up at a yard sale. Greg France was out running around, and he found that. It's not a photograph. That's kind of a litho, I guess. Painting. If you're wondering what that says, it says ecstatic. Ecstatique. Okay. But that goes with the motif of this side of the shop. I don't know. After you start collecting something, it's funny how things turn into a collection. Well, there's somebody's milling machine, all covered in plastic and packed away, ready for the bash. Somebody's going to win that. Is it going to be you? Well, I didn't really want to take my tool post apart, but I thought I'd show you the detents in the lower ring in that. So it's got balls every 15 degrees, and then it's got 2 pins. Let's see. Yeah, the purple right there, there's a little glare. The purple right there is a spring-loaded detent, and there's just 2 of those. There's a close-up of it. Number 12 is a spring-loaded detent pin, and they're 180 degrees apart. But then it's got on 15-degree increments. It's got regular balls all the way around. So as it comes down and indexes, it indexes all the way around into every single ball. But the detents give you a positive feel, and the balls give you in the circular pattern give you a very repeatable feel. And then it's O-ring too, so no crap can get up inside of there. There's an O-ring on the stem right here, and then there's an O-ring on the base ring right here. So it's a pretty nice tool holder. I'm super happy with it. I used it a little bit the other day. I actually made the slugs that weld into the new jib into that round pipe. So I made those 2 slugs for the Timken bearing and the shaft up top, and super happy with the new tool holder. And I got the size 35. They got sizes all the way down. They got them all the way down to 25, 30, 35. This is mine right here. 40, 45, or 40, 50, and 60. Holy moly! So they get pretty big for that. What do they call it? Quadra indexing, quick change tool post. Nice. I was real happy with it. Now these are not in the Shars catalog, I don't think, not yet, but give them a call. That's what I had to do. I had to send an email off and inquire about the Dorian Quadra system, and ordered it through Shars. They can order it for you, and I got a very fair price. You know, special orders don't have to cost a bunch of extra money, but and there's a lead time on them for sure. But go ahead and treat yourself to a new tool post if you want something first class. I think I might get maybe a smaller one for the Logan. I don't know. I might change my lathe, but yeah, nice to have. Well, here's the lower plate, and I just made it triangular because it sits up pretty tight to the wall right here, and I got room for 2 good bolts in it down under the floor. And it's just an old Ford wheel bearing. It's just a Timken roller bearing. So that's the bottom piece that I made. Like I said, just a piece of round stock machined down so the cone part of the bearing will fit on the or press on. So it presses down on there and then welded to a lower plate. So that sits on the floor. Then I made a slug that drops in here, and then the race, you have to hammer it in with a brass punch and get it seated. And then it's a slug about, I think it's about 1.5 inches thick. And then I went through and cored 7/8 holes in the sides of the tube and plug welded the sides. I didn't want to get any weld down around the where the bearing actually goes in. So they're plug welded north, south, east, and west around the bottom of the tube. And then there's also a grease I even made a grease passage, so you can grease that lower bearing pretty easily. And I went ahead and greased it when I was test fitting it. It felt crunchy, so I flushed it out with some grease, and I kind of wish I hadn't now. And then the top is it just accepts a shaft. It's just a solid slug welded in, really no pressure in it. It drives into the tube and just welds around the perimeter to keep it from falling down. Now what happened, I was pulling it out. Guess what fell down inside the pipe? You hear that? Yeah, it's a shaft in there. It's about a 12-inch long shaft, and it fell all the way down to the bottom. I pulled it out, tipped it, got it down to here. If I can't fish it out, looks like I'm gonna have to make a new shaft. And then the shaft just pins in right there. I got one set screw down in there that pinches the shaft. But as I was pulling the shaft out, she drove down, and see you later. Always something. Well, believe it or not, I fished the shaft out of there. You see I gave it a big strong lead in, so even though the tube's not aligned real good, it'll kind of guide its way in. And then it's about a 2/1000 slip fit, and I drilled and tapped the end of it, put a 1/4 in it, and put a fender washer on it. But I didn't have the washer and everything on it because I was taking it apart, so I took these out and down she goes. So anyways, I managed to fish the shaft out. The 1/4 20 hole, I knew the shaft couldn't turn 180 degrees inside of there, so I knew the threaded hole was facing me. I fished in there with a piece of 1/4 20 all thread, ground to a point, and I fished it in and just barely got it started in the end of the shaft, and I was able to fish it back out through the hole. Thank goodness. So it's a nice slip fit, and now I don't have to make a new shaft. Unbelievable. Well, the Bar Z boys came over and helped me hang my I-beam. We put that whole thing together on the floor, and that's the weld joint. We had to do a fish mouth on the I-beam and welded it to the pipe. And back here behind the toolbox, there's my wheel bearing sitting there. So we got a big Timken roller bearing, cone facing up, and then the race is inside the pipe in a slug. And then up top, there are 2 pillow blocks on each side of that 4-inch square tube, and a shaft running through both pillow blocks, and then down into a slug welded into the top of the pipe. And then there's 1 set screw in the side just to keep it rotating. But that's an 8-foot beam on a 9-foot pole. It hangs about 2 inches below the ceiling. It just barely clears that duct, so it'll actually swing over and stow over that piece of ductwork. It goes right over, it passes right over the chuck right here, and if I bring my tailstock down to about here, I can get a hold of it too. So I can always pull the tailstock off. And the ceiling's clear all the way through. The only thing that hangs down is that track right there. Sorry, that light's kind of blowing you out. But, and that just barely clears that track by about a 1/2 inch when it swings out. There it is. So that track right there for my rolling curtain clears that, swings out here. Right by the doorway, it actually hangs out in the doorway a little bit. So if I had something on the tailgate of the truck, I could back up to that, get a hold of it on the tailgate, and swing it all the way over to the lathe, which kind of what I had in mind in the first place. So that got done. The other thing that got done, we removed the cherry on top. So now that thing's just all black and silver and gray. And we're back to the absence of color on Betty, which I like. All we need to do is fix up a trolley. Let's talk about the budget. This I-beam was left over from a job I had up in Hollister, California. This pipe is left over from the job I had in Indiana. That's actually a 4-inch steam pipe. The wheel bearings, that was a junkyard off an old junk F350, I think. Actually, one of my guys, he donated that wheel bearing. I have about $20 into 2 bearings. The shaft was some spare 1045 shafting I had around, just had to cut it down. So I have about $20 or $30 into that. Let's go look at the trolley system. Well, these are conveyor rollers. These are tapered bearings. You can see the taper on the sides, so they fit the profile of the I-beam correctly. They're open bearings, so they're going to need to be greased or oiled. I think if you pack them with grease right, actually the outer layer of grease will protect the rest of the bearing from the junk getting in them. The conveyor links, the actual chain, is cast iron. It uses they call this a dog bone. So they use like a dog bone, and they straddle these 2 side plates right here. And it uses the slip links. When this turns sideways and slides over to the narrow part of the dog bone, you can remove this pin. So no tools required, no nuts, no bolts. It just slips together. As long as the chain's under tension, it can't come apart. But we're going to remove the chain, probably remove the hangers. This is where they hang parts or a spreader bar or whatever. And that's what is going to support the whole mess. So I've got 2 of those. I've got to build me a little spreader bar to go across, to put a chain hoist in the center, But outside of that, those were surplus to a conveyor job, so those cost me nothing. Let's look at the budget again. Less $20 or $30 for those pillow blocks. I'm doing good. Okay, I thought you'd be interested in seeing what a conveyor chain consists of. This is what I'm calling a dog bone. You can see it kind of looks like a dog bone, even though it's kind of hollow all the way that way. And then these are just a standard link, and these are the pins. They've got kind of a square head on them. Everything's very symmetrical about the chain. Now this chain cannot come apart. You see the head of the pin fits into these slots right here on the links, here and here. And this chain literally can't come apart unless you give it slack and turn it 90 degrees to the small part of the dog bone, and then you can turn that pin 90 degrees and pull it out. But as long as the chain's under tension this way, it can't come apart at all. So when you go to take it, if you have to break a chain apart on a conveyor, you have to give the chain slack. You have to release the tension on the take up area and pull the chain together about that, half a link, and then pull it out off the conveyor line, pull it sideways. Then you can pull that pin out and get that apart. And in addition to that, symmetrically, the rollers, left and right halves, very symmetrical. And you see how they slide inside of the dog bone with the parts holders. Those bolt in. After you have left and right halves of the rollers in the dog bone, and this slides inside, and unless this comes out, there's no way to get those out. So you can change a roller on a conveyor anywhere on the line. I thought I just thought I'd throw that in there. Some people were interested in how a conveyor chain goes together, but that's how a conveyor chain works. Okay guys, well that's it for this episode. I wanted to remind you about the impending Summer Bash. It's coming. It is a June 21st and 22nd. Just as a reminder, attendance is still on sale. We still have room in, I still have room in scraping with Phil and casting with Clark. Gear class is full. I still got swap meet space. Send an email to summerbash@barzeindustrial.com for your swap meet spot. Gear class, yeah, it's full. Scraping, we got a little bit of room. And casting with Clark, we got a little bit of room. So we're not shooting for big classes. We want very small personal groups. And those are both on Friday the 21st. If you got me an email, I respond to every one of those emails for a class saying, yeah, you're in, whatever. So I acknowledge the receipt of your email. So if you didn't get a reply, send it again. All right. We'll see you at Summer Bash. I don't know if I'm going to have time to get another video out before Bash, but we'll see. I got a lot of work to do around here. This place is a mess, and we need to get it cleaned up for you guys. All right. Thanks for watching.